I would like to now welcome our keynote speaker for today. I'm very honored to introduce Shashank Deshpande. There is a big list of things that he has done. So I would just like to take a moment to read it out so that we are all aware of his experience and his expertise. Shashank Deshpande has been a designer, entrepreneur, and an investor with around 30 plus years of experience in software products and services. Currently, he is the co-founder and chief business officer of Cubyts, who's building a collaborative design ops platform for product leaders and design teams. He is also the managing partner at Pentathlon Ventures, a boutique venture capital company helping early stage technology companies to scale their business with expertise, provide them a great ecosystem, and of course, the capital. Earlier, Shashank has also been the chief design officer at Globant and has co-founded Claris Technologies in 2008, which has been focusing on user-centered design and technology development. Claris was acquired by NYSE and listed as Global Inc. was listed in NYSE in May 2015. Shashank has also managed design consultants for Human Factors International, that is the HFI. He's worked with Veritas, Symantec, and Siemens. He is a chartered member of TIE and a member of ACM, and Sikchi, founder, director, member of HCI Professionals, an association of India. He has a degree in mechanical engineering and a master's in industrial design from NID, passed out in 1992. I think being in the field for more than 3 decades, I am very excited to hear Shashank share his expertise and his perspective with us while he takes us through the journey so far. Shashank, please.
Thanks for coming, and thanks to STC India for inviting me here. It's many congratulations for completing 25 years. I know it's not easy to organize these conferences, so thanks to Rajiv, the entire STC India leadership here. I know Mac since very early days, so it's really a pleasure. And just to sort of recap, I was here 20 years back in, I think, the second conference that happened, STC conference that happened in Pune, which was probably in 2003. I was here. So in some sense, I'm glad that I'm back here speaking to all of you and have some conversation of how things have changed and maybe how things have not changed much. Yeah. As a fellow designer, I follow the information development, technical writing community very, very closely, and I've been very fortunate to meet some very accomplished, very competent technical writers in my career, and have learned several things from them on how to build help systems, instructional design systems. I'll use this term content writing, technical writing interchangeably. I hope I'm not going to create any communal wars here, because I think if you're writing to communicate information or if you're writing to influence someone, I think they're a little similar. But more of that in my talk later, because that's going to be my crux of my conversation today. I'd like to have this a little bit more interactive. So I would like to leave some time for Q&A, so that whatever ideas that we're going to talk here, I love to hear some comments. I love to hear some observations from many of you. But before I begin, let me do a very quick poll. How many of you write for product versus how many of you write for marketing? Okay, so product. Who writes for product? Wow. Wow, okay, so that's really, really very impressive. And how many of you write for marketing? I mean, that's okay. We'll come to that. How many of you are sort of individual contributors? Okay, that's a sizable team. And one last one. How many of you are writing for enterprise software, enterprise applications? Okay, and B2C consumer applications? So by and large, I can conclude that all of you are writing for information. Most of you are individual contributors, and I also see that most of you are writing for enterprise software. So that's good. Just gives me some sense. So before I get into the next 25 years, and which is the theme of the conference, let's look at what's happened in last 25 or last few decades that has gone by. Yeah. So if you look at the 90s, the 2000, 2010, and 2020, how many of you actually wrote any technical or did any technical writing in 90s? Anyone here? Okay. So they were, okay. So which year did you start writing technical? 93, okay. Sure, just, yeah. So that's typically what happens, that whenever I start talking about saying, okay, when I started my design career, people say, that's the year I was born. So when, so it's been really. So by the way, one of my first assignments that I got was technical writing. Like as a designer, somehow people thought that this person could be good in technical writing. And I worked on a very interesting project. So doing some work for CMC, which has now become part of TCS. And they were like a trading desk for stock traders that was designed. And this was all those green and black terminals where you had function keys and you had some numeric keypads to kind of this thing. So CMC asked me to write a user manual for what it was called as BOLT, the Bombay Online Trading Desk. And I knew that a lot of these traders who were mostly Gujarati traders, when I did some talk, it's going to be very hard for anyone to follow the English style of writing. But what worked well was that we created a cheat code. So very early we created where the function keys were mapped to certain things. And if you want to have a quote for a stock, or if you want to place a trade, or look at some status of the trade, etc. So there were function keys that were mapped. And that was the only thing that they really liked it. So in fact, they carried it in the pockets. So I've been sort of very fortunate to see how the career has progressed since 90s. So we did a lot of these printed manuals. It kind of went on to doing CD-ROMs and hyperlink systems. We also had the transition that happened in 2010 was a lot of this rich media and animations and video and audio started coming in play. And that's when people started writing very structured content. It also, that was the era where you started reusing content chunks rather than writing everything from them. So we've seen the profession transition quite a bit in last 25 years. And I expect that the next 25 years are going to be equally exciting. And things have just started to warm up, and we can see some glimpse of that in the current decade. And fortunately for me, this has mapped very well to some of the career transitions that I have done. In 90s, I was like an individual contributor, like most of you. Kind of became a manager of a design function at Veritas. In late part of that decade, I started a company called Claris Technologies, which kind of made me from a manager to an entrepreneur. And that's when I started looking at the business of design rather than the design per se. And at some point, when I exited that business, I started looking at saying, okay, hey, how should I look at business as an investment rather than actually running the business? So you sort of have a multiplier effect, not just on one business, but multiple of those business. So I believe that the last 3 decades that we have seen has been very exciting, and the next 25 years are going to be equally exciting. And before I get into what those transitions are, let's look at some of the growth levers. So something that really excites me is that content has been reaching millions of people in completely unimaginable ways. You must have heard of this term called software is eating the world. And what it is eating is all the digital content. The food that they have is all the digital content. So every social media application, every app that you see has ensured that the content reaches places which we've never really could have imagined. So every minute, there are several million people who create content, and there are several million people who consume that content. Every message, every tweet, every video, be it fake or true, reaches every corner of the world instantly. Yeah? And you may be working in a B2C or B2B companies, but using content to reach potential customers is extremely important. Numbers show that the social media has become bigger than advertising. In fact, people rely less on advertising and more on content to ensure that their message reaches out to the people. So content was never marketing earlier, but now it has become. And however, it doesn't stop there, right? There are far more changes that we are seeing. One of the other aspects that we have seen of this internet explosion that we are seeing is growth of online communities. Are you all part of any online communities, either professional or social? Is there anyone who is not? Anyone who is not? Okay, there's no, right? So most of us have been part of some online community or the other. Like-minded professionals come together with their peers or avatars to exchange ideas, to exchange information, or in many cases, exchange code. That's how all the open source movements have come in. And many contribute to influence, but many come to learn and grow professionally. Professional networks like Medium, LinkedIn, Twitter, Reddit, GitHub, Slack, all have become hubs of interest groups of pretty much everything that you can imagine under the sun. The key takeaway for us is how can we become part of creating a network rather than being one. So you should not be followers, but saying, okay, hey, how can I be part of this so that I'm contributing something effectively. There are close to about 5 million professionals who work as influencers and who contribute to many of these online groups in terms of all those things that I talked about. It could be information, it could be code, it could be ideas. These influencers is a very, very important trend in my opinion, and we'll look at that a little bit later. But I think one of the transitions that I believe is how influencers are playing a key role in taking some buying decisions, and not just for the B2C, but also for a lot of these enterprise applications. Again, this growth doesn't stop here. I think there are other growth levers that are playing a very, very critical role, and it leads to another one, which is in terms of personalization and contextualization. We have seen a little bit of this in late last year, but we also see that continuing this year. When you have all this content and you have all these communities, I think it's going to be very natural that you need to target that content, right? You cannot send everything to everyone without making any changes. So how many times has it happened that you have searched or looked for something, and then very sophisticated targeting is starting to happen? We live in a world where we are all part of cohorts, right? And our buyers or our sellers exactly know what part of the cohort we are. They know our needs, they know our intent. Applications like Netflix, Amazon, LinkedIn, Twitter are really, really good in employing these techniques to send you very personalized and contextualized information. In fact, these algorithms are so sophisticated that they can actually bias you or change your opinion in a certain manner. Now, this may not be very desirable in many B2C applications, but in many B2B applications, I believe this is good because it can save a lot of person hours of work if you know what the intent is or what the need is of your end user. So I believe personalization and contextualization needs massive amount of content creation because every cohort that you're going to target has a very specific need, and you'll need to create a lot of this content. Now, many of this content will be user-generated. So you'll see people contributing in terms of ideas, in terms of whatever articles or things like that. but there needs to be someone who can curate this content. So let me put all these three levers together and see what sort of massive transformation that we're seeing in late last decade as well as the early this decade. So the first thing is content is getting pervasive. Everywhere you go, you'll see content being consumed. Every application, every social media application, everywhere it's all there. There's a massive growth of online communities that are fueling user-generated content. That will need moderation. There's personalization and contextualization that requires curation for multiple cohorts. These three layers are fueling growth by feeding into each other. So this is not like, these are not independent trends. These are not independent levers, right? They're all feeding into each other. Now let's talk about some of the disruptive forces. And these disruptive forces are coming because these three things are sort of coming together. Now there's one big disruptive force that's like it's an 800-pound gorilla or an elephant in the room. Can you name one? What is the disruptive force that we're going to see in the next this decade or the early next decade? AI, right? So you guessed it right. I think everyone is worried and talking about the AI. And let's take this bull by its horn. So when you talk about generative AI, it's one of those powerful forces, and I'm pretty sure that there's going to be a lot of conversation, a lot of discussion in the next 2 days of how to on how to tackle this issue. But let me lay the land the way I see it and the way I have kind of analyzed it in the last few years. The first question is, how many of you have used any AI system? And what is that AI system that you? Sorry? Google? Google Alexa. Yeah. So you may not even know, but I think there are systems that you are using right now. So there is Google, there's Siri, there's Alexa, there are others who use AI technology on a daily basis, right? And I'm sure you probably used at least one of them. Has anyone used an application like Grammarly? Everyone uses it, right? Who doesn't use Grammarly? Yeah. So what Grammarly has done is that it has learned how to understand a tone, whether it's an informal one, whether it's a business-like, or whether it's formal. All these things by learning from all of us, right? It has picked up the way we write. It has analyzed those sentiments, and it can recommend a response. And all this by learning from us. So AI tool is only as good as what it has learned from people like us. Yeah? So there are hundreds of such applications that are continuously learning on a day-to-day basis and making our job easier. However, I mean, everything needs to be learned first, right? I mean, you cannot have an AI system where it on day one it will know everything about an application. You need to feed some content. It can learn only if you can some existing content. So if you look at applications like ChatGPT or others, what they've done is that they have digested about petabytes and zettabytes of data, and it has learned everything that you can think of by scraping the open internet. And typically the way they do this is through large language learning models. It's called LLMs. So these are very useful. So things like ChatGPT and all are very useful for horizontal applications. Like Google Search, it will do a fantastic job of sort of giving you a generic answer, like let's say how to use a particular application, or let's say if you want to visit Kashmir, what is a good time and what places to visit, et cetera, et cetera. So it can give you a good answers for very generic applications. But if you look at a closed domain, like for example, search, if you want to do some search on your intranet, Google is not going to help, right? Because the information that Google can scan and analyze is only what is available in the outside world. But if you want to use something that's within your domain or within a closed domain, ChatGPT and such horizontal LLMs are not going to do a good job. You'll need to build a vertical LLM. And I think that's where the opportunity is, that there are going to be hundreds and thousands of vertical LLMs that will be built. And who is going to provide the content for them to learn? And people like all of us, either it's already created or something that we'll have to create. And this is called as training data for every AI application. Without training data, all these AI applications are worthless. It's like garbage in, garbage out. So that's one of the first things to remember about generative AI, that it is only as good as what it can learn. It will learn very fast. I mean, that is a fact. But it has to be fed with something that will. The other challenges that we have seen with ChatGPT or such horizontal LLMs are issues like copyright information. There are also issues of bias. So because it will pick up from the open source, so there are bias, so a lot of biases that have crept in. There's also many cases like incomplete or insufficient information that ChatGPT has given. Like for example, if you ask ChatGPT saying, okay, how do you use Cubyts, the application that we have built, the platform that we have built, it will give you a very incomplete answer because it has not learned how to use Cubyts in its this thing. So it's sort of in some sense, if you ask it right now, it will give you a very insufficient answer. So many of the people that I know who are building generative AI are working on this model called human in the loop. So no one is building a pure AI system. There's always a human in the loop. So it can give you content, or it can give you this thing, but you need to have a human who will look at the content for completion, to remove any biases, or to ensure that it's copyright free. Yeah. So that's the again another second place where I believe that a lot of us can play a very critical role. So it's just that our ground post is now going to is move from being writing too much new content to saying, okay, hey, how can you have curation? How can you have moderation? How can you have things like ensuring that it's complete? So human in loop, I don't think it's going to go away for at least next 10, 15 years. And as you build new content, as you build new things, this problem is going to become far more the same. So I think that's sort of my take on generative AI. It's important for us to understand what's happening there, but I still believe that there will be need to create new content, which as you write new features, as you write new things, and it will also need a lot of curation to ensure that if there are any incompletion or biases that are there. So with that, I want to sort of move to the next disruption that I see. This disruption, I'm not sure how many of you are following, but I think the product and its communication is becoming very, very integrated. We have started seeing this trend since a lot of these SaaS products, a lot of these product-led growth kind of products have come into the picture. Right? How many of you have written any content for a SaaS product or a PLG kind of a growth product? Oh, that's pretty good. Actually, so if you're building a product for what is typically now called as a product-led growth or a SaaS product, it's very hard to distinguish between what is a product and what is this marketing content, right? I mean, it's all kind of getting very intertwined into each other. So every content that you can think can be gamified and integrated. Many of the communication, like reviews or supporting tools or polls or surveys or training, whatever you can think of can be used to sell the product or to influence someone to sell the product. And in many cases, I mean, we've seen things like, I don't know if you use tools like Airtable or Canva or Coda or Notion. A lot of these applications have created so much of content, so much of templates, that if you search on Google, the first thing that will come is a template. You click on the template, and then you get into the product. So these content has sort of played a very critical role to bring in the virality or to bring in the adoption of the product. So that's a very significant trend in my opinion, and I think we need to understand that it's not going to be sufficient to just write about product information, but also see how we can create content that can potentially go viral, or that can be potentially searched on Google, that can lead to the product. I think every B2C company uses this very, very effectively. I don't know if you've I think one of the examples that comes to my mind is the Airbnb. So if you look at it, and I hope this is still working, they have, can you see the 267 there? Yeah. So basically, it just to build the confidence, right? And that, okay, here, there are people, 267 people have given a 5-star rating just under the rate, right? Their main business, what they do is just rent house, right? And I think that's where they want to influence, and that's the content. If you look at Steve is a super host, right? Again, you're giving content, but you're also adding a lot of marketing to it. And there's also a little bit of comment on how super hosts are very influential. Look at the photographs, the way they're very, very, very critical that they have the kind of photographs that they have shot and the kind of things that they have written. Now, if you go down below the fold, you have things like, that it's sparkling key, that the 9 guests out of who've kind of mentioned that this is a very sparkling, clean place. And then everything else that you'll see is very sort of marketing oriented, right? So it's very hard to separate out the product and its marketing these days. And this is what's happening in almost every product, every SaaS product that you'll see. That content will get into marketing, and marketing will get into the content. Even at Cubyts, we rely heavily on content marketing. In fact, most of our effort to get our word out is to ensure that we create a lot of these thought leadership articles, we create a lot of tools, we create a lot of training material. In fact, we get a lot of inquiries from our training module. So we have a training model. People come to there and say, okay, hey, we would like to sign up for the product. So this is sort of a trend, and again, a big disruption, but hopefully you can ride on this wave and see how you can position your career, transition your career. The next sort of disruptive force that I'm seeing is that content is increasingly getting community-driven or user-generated, right? Now, if you've seen the earlier trend or earlier thing that I talked about, that there are going to be a lot of communities, and these communities contribute in ideas and thoughts. So you have to understand that being an SME, being a subject matter expert, or being a sort of a subject expert, it's not within the company. There are a lot of experts outside the company as well. Yeah? So if you want to get your motorbike repaired, or your refrigerator repaired, or your washing machine repaired, I think there are like tons of content that's available out there, right? Or to take an example from my Veritas world, how do you take some backup effectively, or how do you ensure that there is if there's a failure, how do you take care of that? So there are a lot of content that people write based on their experience, and they have become subject matter experts in their own right? Now you have to see how you can bring that content in, how you can ensure that that content is kind of nicely integrated into your ecosystem and leveraged. Yeah. Though there are so in fact, there's one of the trends that we have seen is how can you become more community-led rather than product-led? I think increasingly this trend is going to become very, very prominent, that you no longer talk about the product features, but you talk about how you build a community. In fact, there are applications like, I don't know if you've heard of an application called Postman, which is an API testing software. The first thing that they did was to build a community of about 500,000 users. They had no product. or just to build a community first around API testing, and then started building the product. And it's been a very, very successful product, very, very interesting. So I think that's a trend, and that's where every company, every organization is going to move towards. No longer we'll have people just within the company writing content. I think there'll be people outside the company who are writing content, and you need to see how you can best leverage that content to your this thing. So of course there'll be curation required, there'll be moderation required, there'll be some, in fact, some generation required as well. But this is the trend. Earlier we would just write a thought leadership article, but now it has gone to where you need to do a podcast, or you do a webinar. I heard that STC is doing podcasts, so that's the way to build communities. That's the way to go, and then that helps users get attracted to that community, and then you can start throwing some of your product ideas in that as well. So you sort of becoming the role that I see is transitioning from just writing to being a strategist and saying, okay, hey, how a lot of this content that gets generated outside and inside be fuel to of course communicate, but also to influence. Yeah. So if you look at, so that's sort of the community-led model that I believe. The third thing that I'm seeing is and again, we have seen this in past about the whole dynamic and headless delivery. How many of you have used any headless CMSs in the past? Okay. So I'm sure a lot of these experienced technical writers have used headless content delivery mechanism. But this is a very important thing, in my opinion, that not just writing content or not just curating content, but also ensuring that the content reaches the right people. Yeah? So, and for that, you need a mechanism. You need a tech mechanism to deliver that. So headless and dynamic content delivery is the future of how content will get distributed. If you are if you're working on a phone, or if you're working on a tablet, or if you're working on a desktop, or you may be working on some specialized device, all this will require content to be fed from just one place. So there's only one content store, and information or the content delivery happens through a mechanism where it's rendered on just in time. So you don't have to render this earlier and then serve it. It gets rendered. It picks up the right content from various sources and it just demonstrates it. So this is increasingly you write once and it gets delivered to multiple places. Be it, it could be self-serve, it could be your kiosk, it could be even your AR, VR sets. Everything gets served from just one location. So this trend, I think, started many years back, but it's going to become very critical that whatever information that you need at whatever device, at whatever location, or whatever point of time, it gets delivered with those constraints. So if you look at all these 3 or 4 trends that I'm talking about, and if I put them together, I see a generative AI, which is AI-driven. I see a lot of user-generated content, which is very community-driven. And I see dynamic delivery, which is very, very tech-driven. And if I put all these things together, and I was thinking of, what could be like a right scenario to describe how this world will be. And then I looked at this sort of you can say use case or a scenario. So imagine you are in a place where you're clicking a picture. So there is a camera that has sensed the right location. It has sensed the light. It has sensed the subject. And it has also sensed your intent. Yeah? So all this has come through all these technologies that I talked about. So generative AI will be able to help you click a perfect picture because it knows what is the right light, what is the right angle that you should hold. because there are millions of people earlier who come to this same site and clicked a picture. So it exactly knows, and it has kind of learned the best way to click a picture. The user also has learned several tips and tricks from the community of which place to go, how to click. So there's also this whole community-led thing where you can tell him that, okay, the best picture to go is probably this location, and that's what he's chosen. There's a dynamic delivery that's happening where you need to ensure that whatever screen he's seeing, so he's seeing a very small screen, it's giving you the right content or it's giving you the right information. And he might see a very different information once he goes onto his desktop or a tablet or a phone, etc. But in this small screen, with all the input constraints and all the screen limitations, whatever you can give help or information to click a right picture is all there. So this is the world of possibility. So you can now go and do a little bit of that thought experiment within your own scenarios, be it you may be working for a product or you may be working for service, but let's try and do this sort of a thought experiment, say, okay, how is it going to change with these three possibilities? Maybe my suggestion is that run a hackathon where you can get all the information developers, or maybe get some of your engineers to say, okay, hey, we imagine a possibility like this, which is going to be very AI-driven, which is going to be very community-driven, and which is going to be very sort of delivery-driven. And let's see how things are going to change for the product or the service that you're building. So with that, I come to my final message of how are you going to shape your career? Okay, so of course it's not going to be easy, but I think a lot of these opportunities, a lot of these disruptions that you're seeing are in my opinion opportunities. So there are these things that you can learn, you can pick up and move or upgrade your skill. And it's not like the first time we are seeing this, right? I mean, in my last 25, 30 years of my career, I must have seen these transitions at least 3 or 4 times. When the internet came in, there were very similar things talked about, saying, okay, we're going to lose a large number of jobs, and there are going to be very fewer opportunities for people. Then this whole internet applications that came in, or the cloud applications started coming in. I think there was a similar talk about saying, okay, we're going to lose, there were going to be fewer opportunities. So every transition that we've seen, I've seen this thing that hey, you're going to. But I think that in last 25, 30 years, there have been very few jobs that have been lost. In fact, they have always created more opportunities. If you look at STC community about 20 years back, it was maybe 1/3 of this size. Now it has grown to 3 times or 4 times bigger, or in fact even bigger outside this, right? So it's like, as a knowledge worker, I think there are very few risks that I see. In fact, most of this will be opportunities for you to kind of pick up, upgrade yourself, learn new things, learn new areas, and then ride that wave. So I'm going to leave you with some very practical advice. So how do I see the role, in considering all these disruptions that we're seeing? I think the role is going to evolve into a content strategist. So you move from creation to curation. You move from being an SME to an influencer. You move from managing content to managing communities. And you move from creating content to crafting content strategies. Yeah? And then I just did a quick search on LinkedIn to see how many open positions are there for content strategists. And I saw that there are close to about, so between Naukri and LinkedIn, there are close to about 5,000 odd content strategists. And they could be named differently. I mean, there are some people call it digital strategists, some of them call it content strategists. There are some people who call it like a information strategy. So there are different names that have been used. But the crux is that there are 5,000 open just in India. And I'm just talking about the opportunities that happen. So that's sort of my advice and my my sort of closing remarks. that every transition, every disruption, every tech that comes in is an opportunity to upgrade, to opportunity to learn new things, an opportunity to change the way you think, the change way you deliver. And you should look at all these things that are happening around you just as an opportunity. So I want to sort of stop here and see if there are questions, comments, any suggestions for us to speak, for us to discuss. Thank you.
Hello, sir. Nice presentation. Actually, when the information about ChatGPT came few months back, was it really a hype? And has that hype come down in last few months?
Yeah, there always a little bit of this. When new technology comes in, there is this hype that it can solve everything from world hunger to. So there's always a little bit of this hype. But like I said, it's good for only very horizontal LLMs. It's not very good for vertical LLMs. And people have started realizing that, okay, hey, if you ask a very specific question from a domain, it's not going to give you answers. But it points to a direction, in my opinion. ChatGPT, like Google search, will have its own place, will have its own influence. But I think what is important or what is very critical is that how does it, how can you use that technology within your domain and whatever your domain is. And I think there is a lot of work that needs to be done in that. And at Cubyts, the company that I'm trying to create a lot of operational details to something, and we're trying to marry that to some high-level insights. So getting those insights from a lot of data points is not very easy. So people, data scientists or technical writers or content writers, all of them are coming together and sort of trying to figure that out. So yeah, there is definitely a lot of hype, but it points to a direction, in my opinion. And you need to understand that direction and see how it will change in your own small little world. Yeah.
Thank you. Any more questions?
Hello, sir. Thank you for the very good presentation. And my question was, we've been used to the structured writing for long now. So now when you talk about dynamic presentation of content.
I can't hear.
When you talk about dynamic presentation of content,
Yeah.
So where do you see the future of structured writing? Like we spent a lot of time on style guides or presentation content.
Yeah.
So what do you see, like when we talk of?
Yeah. So I think that's a good point. I missed talking about that. But I think a lot of us write very structured content, right? I mean, we all know data and we follow those this thing. I think in future, the world I see is it's going to be unstructured content. So you write whatever you want to write, right? And there'll be algorithms that will create a structure out of that. We'll create style sheets out of that. We'll create a presentation format for that. It'll add its head and show it. I think that's where the world is going to move. I think structured writing is going to go away. Of course, this is my prediction. I don't know if any of you agree to this thing, but it's unstructured content. The head will be determined separately. The structure will be determined through some algos.
Thank you. Any more? Just a minute.
Do people agree here with my assessment? Is that, yeah? I've not been very closely associated with so much of technical writing, but I feel that that's where the world is moving. Yeah.
I am Manisha, and I'm more interested in monetizing technical communication work within the organization because, our tech writers put in a lot of effort. They have so many...
So closer, mic closer.
Yeah. Hello? Yeah. I'm just looking for better way of monetizing tech writing work within the organization.
Yeah.
So have you seen that in your any of the past experiences where you were able to monetize tech writing work done by the tech writing team within the organization, because they cater to a lot of departments and they face so many challenges. First, they don't get inputs on time, then sometimes reviews don't happen.
Yeah.
And and it takes them some time, good time, to deliver their deliverables.
Understood. Yeah.
And that those deliverables, I want those to be appreciated in terms of monetization within the organization.
No, I completely agree, and I get that point. It's an important point. A lot of people we designers also feel very underappreciated and not so much of not so much of love from management to so that's right. But I think opportunities like this are places where you can say, okay, hey, let's no longer look at saying, okay, hey, how many likes we get or how many. First of all, I don't even know how many of you sort of have an analytics that is built around it to see if your content is being used, not used, etc. So even that could be like a good beginning to start with. But the other thing is that opportunities like this where you move towards content marketing or this is like real value, right? I mean, no marketing person will say, okay, hey, content is bad. More content is better. If you write 100 articles, I don't know if you look at companies like HubSpot, which is a very CRM company, or if you look at company like Hootsuite and all that, like they read massive amount of content, and everything happens through, all the lead generation happens through those content engine. So I think those are opportunities, and you should use all these tech changes that happen, saying, okay, hey, how can I bring value? How can I monetize? How can I get better return for the work that I'm doing? But good question.
Thank you. We are just going to take one more question, please, in the interest of time. Yeah. Sorry to play a spoil sport, but Shashank is available here, so you can please reach
I'm
out
available
after
and we
the
can
session.
speak. I'm here till lunchtime. We can speak.
So we can take one more question.
So so in your initial presentation, you had mentioned copyright and that aspect. So with respect to AI, how do we deal with confidential information? How would we, then there are certain things we only disclose to certain customers, and we are aware of that as individual contributors, and we organize our content in that way. But if we just open it up to an AI, that decision making, I find that a bit problematic with AI.
Yeah. So right now, what ChatGPT has done, or what OpenAI has done, is that they have gone ahead and pretty much scrape the whole worldwide, and that's the reason there are a lot of copyright issues, right? There are pictures being used and all that. But I think if you apply this on a closed domain, then you don't have, so you control what you open or what you want to get exposed. But right now with ChatGPT, if you do some search, it just brings up some copyright this thing, and there also that information also could be biased. So those are some of the problems. But if you apply it on a closed domain, and like I said, like on a particular vertical, I think I don't see that as a problem at all. So you have to control whom you're opening up and what you're opening up.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, good. Shashank, this is the last question. This is Edwin here. I'm listening to you after 20 years or more. You're still as inspiring and informative as you used to be. My question is this. So AI encompasses more than just LLMs and generative AI, right? So they're looking for more and more applications. One of them is automating installation, configuration, and a lot of operational issues, right? So I'm wondering if technical communications will have a shrinking audience as AI proliferates. They won't need that information.
Yeah. So like I said, there are opportunities. Generative AI can only do so much. There is always going to be need. So let's say if you write a new feature, right? if your product has written a new feature or something, you'll need to write something about that. I mean, there's no way for generative AI to know that, okay, hey, this is the feature or how this feature works. So there has to be some content. Now, once you've written some content or people have written similar content, then it can learn and it can give. But I think writing content for some new features, new functions, it's not going to go away. And like I said, and that's just beginning, right? There's several opportunities for you to provide the training data so that it can do a better job. There are several opportunities for you to do like a human in a loop once the generation is done, things like that. So I don't think there's a doom story here. I think there's in fact if at all, it's a very positive development in my opinion. Everyone will have to use this. Everyone will have to adapt this. But that's an opportunity and at the same time challenge.
Thank you.